Erica Young Reitz. It is so great to have you here on For Real. Thank you for joining me for a conversation today. I'm excited to talk with you.
Kim, I am thrilled to be here. I'm familiar with your website and things you're up to, and this is just going to be so fun. Thank
Oh, I'm
you.
just so glad you took some time because you have very important work, and we're talking about that today. First, you are such a treasure trove of resources for college students and recent alums. And I had such a hard time narrowing down what to talk about. This is a good problem for me. Typically, I think, okay, I've got a good passel of places I could go. I struggled today, and that is so awesome because that means your book, your website, your teaching is so full of good stuff. I couldn't even pick. So kudos to you.
Thank you, Kim. I'm excited for our conversation.
Oh, man. Well, listen, for those who are not involved in the publishing world, I'm going to give a little backstage pass. Typically, you write a book, you release the book, you talk about the book for 45 seconds, and then that goes the way of the dinosaur. You, Erica, wrote a book, and let's see, 2017, did it come out
Very
initially?
close. 2016. Yeah.
Okay. Your book is called After College, Navigating Transitions, Relationships, and Faith. For our YouTube people, I'm holding it up. This bad boy came out in 2016. And
The original.
10 years later, you're re-releasing. This is like the papal blessing in publishing. Books that are released twice are unicorns. So that means this is both timeless and timely. So first off, sister, congratulations to have written something that is so worthy of discussion. We're doing it twice. How does that feel?
Surprising. It was a really delightful surprise that the editorial team at IVP said, "Hey, let's make an updated edition of After College." And just a little my backstory. I went to writing school where it was pummeled into us, rejection, rejection, rejection.
Yeah.
You will probably never get published. 3% of manuscripts get published. And so I had to even have a paradigm shift for even trying to engage in the publishing world. So to not only get a first-time publishing contract and then see it in print again as a second edition was a dream come true. Truly delightful surprise.
If I had champagne in here, I would toast you because I know how hard that is. I mean, you're right. It's hard to break in the first time, but then to have people say, no, we need it again is just extraordinary. So I think it really speaks to who you are. And also the guts of this book, the content and the ways you have road tested this with so many students is just so, I just don't know that there's anything else out there like this. So IVP, good job. They're the ones
thanks for taking a risk on me.
They sent a beautiful press release and a catalog, and I pounced on it and circled yours and called right away. So,
Thanks, Kim.
Okay, so before we dive into the book itself, I'd love for you first just to tell me a little bit about what you do at your organization, which is called After College Transition. From what I gather, that kind of came out of the first round with this book, but this is your full-time gig helping equip college graduates. So talk to me about what you do on any given Tuesday.
Yeah, so it's my part-time. I have two major roles that I play, but my heart and my passion and my dedication is to really helping those who work with college students to get the proven tools and resources they need to equip students to thrive in that transition. And this passion was really born out of, if it's true, according to career counselor Mark Savickas, that we seek to actively master what we passively suffered. My transition out of college was not the smoothest. I'm pretty honest about that in the After College book. And so I wanted to write the book that I wanted someone to hand to me as I was graduating. And then years of journeying with students and getting to research this through my graduate studies became the fuel for that first edition of the book. And so I'm actively leading After College Transition, consulting and coaching in the higher ed space with those college ministers and church leaders and higher ed professionals who want to better equip students to thrive. And I also work part-time for a leadership development company called Bartell and Bartell, where I get to help leaders who are actively growing up Gen Z individuals in their workspaces and drawing out their leadership potential.
Okay. I love it. What was the quotation that you said? We actively
We seek to actively master what we passively suffered. And sometimes that's really where we find calling.
Oh man, that should be a tattoo if I were into them. When I think about my own college graduation, I have so much compassion for myself looking back at that girl in the mortarboard hat. And for my friends as well, some of us were headed to a very prescribed next step. So I was a teacher, as a high school teacher, and so I knew next steps after student teaching were to take my shiny portfolio that I'd just labored over in my sparkly little sparse resume and head out and try to get a job to go to school district. So that was a pretty clear next gig. A lot of my friends were very unsure, depending on the field that they had studied or were interested in. They just didn't even know what would come next. And I'd love for you to talk about that, about the flexibility and resilience college graduates need. And I'm not sure that I don't know that I got a lot of miles under my belt trying out those ideas of flexibility and resilience before graduating. So talk to me about that, about both students who have a very clear path and those who don't. They've all had a pretty structured beginning. So we do K-12, we do college, and then all of a sudden the vista is real wide open. What are some of the first things you say to people who are standing on that hill, looking outward, where all of a sudden it's not about next semester or the dean's list or your GPA, it's now you choose your own adventure? What do you say to people who come to you who look a little doe-eyed maybe?
One, first, I love that you point out that we were used to playing the role of student for 17 straight years.
Right.
I was a student. And even if an individual goes on to graduate school, it's a very different student experience. And so part of why that transition from college into the next phase, and I will say, arguably, it's the most difficult transition someone makes up to that point in their lives. Now, we all have different stories that may have contributed to other really significant transitions. And I still think it's one of the most significant because so many things shift at once. It's almost like we're standing on this fault line and it's all opening up. And wow, my role has changed. What I do for fun has changed. My financial status has changed. How I find friends has changed. All of it's shifting at once. And so we're trying to figure out what does multifaceted faithfulness look like in a multifaceted transition when there are so many unknowns? And so what I want to say is take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. And this is normal. I wish I would have known that I wasn't the only one. And not that I didn't have friends, but I was one of those majors that did not sound like a job. English. And so, what do you do with that? And even for those who have a clear trajectory, it's different than what we were used to prior. And to be able to just name that and name what's going on psychologically when we're in a transition. Too often we talk a lot about change and get excited about change, but we don't always talk about transition, like what's going on internally as we go through that change, which is different person to person.
Totally. So when people come into your office or to your organization, or you're speaking at their group and they look panicked and are twitchy eyed, you say, first of all, we're going to normalize this. It's okay that you feel twitchy. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Then I wonder what first. So I have a senior in college right now, Anna. She's absolutely delightful. She has a lot of options in front of her. Just as you mentioned, grad school, she's a biology and a Spanish double major. And so very left and right brain. She lived in Spain last year, which was totally an adventure. And now this year, 1 year from that, she's faced with all of these gigantic decisions: grad school, not grad school, working in the private sector first, moving away from home, staying where she is, being plugged into the church that she loves, going to another church that's 60 miles away. She is having to filter so many huge life decisions at once. And it feels for the first time more circular than linear.
Yes.
So my question for you, and even I would add for those listening who had a graduate anytime during the pandemic, this is, honest choices even coming out of high school were very strange because there was we remember saying to her even in August before she left for college, we'll see. I don't know if it's going to be open.
Up in the air.
Totally. And so what choices or decisions for someone like Anna and in her age group, what takes top billing? How do they even start? How do they know where to begin?
Yeah, it's a great question. And author Meg Jay, who I would recommend, she wrote the book, The Defining Decade. It's all about making the most of your 20s. Like life isn't on hold. What we make, the decisions we make in our 20s matter for who we are in our 30s. 30 isn't the new 20. It's kind of part of that. And she updated that book as well. But she talks about adult life is made up of kind of who, what, and where, like who we're spending time with, what we do for a living, and where we built our adult life. And I think so often what takes top billing is the what. Like, what am I going to do for paid work? What's next? How many times have you found, for listeners on the call, maybe a young person, you're like, oh, what's next? What's next? Or maybe you're a young person on the call and you're like, I just want to wear a big button that says, I have no idea what's next.
Stop asking me.
Like, stop asking me. And so I like to reframe it. And this can't be, not every young person can make this the top question, but too infrequently, we ask, where's next? And I would like to invite listeners to make that a first question from a standpoint of just, I think we have a too underdeveloped theology of place. Like we don't think about place enough. We're kind of willing, oh, I'll take that job and I'm sure I'll find community and rich life in that place. When too often the experience with alumni is, I take this job in the middle of nowhere and I didn't realize this would be hard to build my adult life there. And so thinking about where's next, I think about a student, David, who had 3 different job offers on the table. He's looking at these hiring packages, and it's very tempting to bottom line it. Like, this is the better salary, so I'm going to go for this job. One job was in Armonk, New York. One job was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And one job was somewhere in Texas. And we just said, David, where do you want to build your adult life? Where is God at work? Where can you join him? Where would be a positive place for a 20-something? And he said, you know what? I'm going to reduce my search I'm going to limit this to Philadelphia because I know there's people in Philadelphia that I can join. And he ended up taking the job offer in Philadelphia because it was a community he wanted to be a part of. Now, the job actually ended up not working out. And you could say, David, like, you should have taken the job in Texas. And he said, absolutely not. Because I chose community first and moved for that community, I was able to, step away from that toxic job, couch surf for a time, and narrowed his search to Philly. And that's where he wanted to build his adult life. So I think asking where's next is just as valuable, or if not more so, than what's next.
Okay. So how do folks sift through even that decision? So I don't know, using David as the example, did he already have friends in Philly? Did he already know what was there? Because a lot of folks are when I was graduating college, I was kind of like, okay, let's go new. Let's go to a new place. So how do you pair those concerns? I want something new, a new adventure, and I do want a community. I know I want to build and have a community. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, and there's not a right or wrong. I think about another student, Jackie, who was like, I'm moving to Denver. I have one other person that I know was willing to make the move with her so that they could be encouraging one another, but she wanted the adventure. Yeah. And she decided, I'm going, but she did research. What is it like for a 20-something? She learned this is an up and coming city for young people. This many young people are moving into the city every day. These are things, you could do that. There's so much available at our fingertips in terms of access to information. You can find out, what's the housing market like? What are bills going to be like when I move here? What do people do for fun in Denver? And so if you're an outdoorsy person, what's available to me? So she did a lot of that upfront research. For David, he did know there was a group of students that had left Penn State, 17 individuals who planted a church in Philadelphia that he wanted to join. And so that was part of what made it this choice that rose to the top for him. I've also, Kim, I've watched other individuals who have felt, I feel pressure to do something new when maybe there was a book that came out, Staying is the New Going. And that, the most meaningful thing they could do was say, I'm going to actually commit to this place, to borrow from Wendell Berry. I'm going to commit to this place for its flourishing and my own, because I have some roots here. And it's also about figuring out, what does it mean to level up in this place? I'm no longer a student. What does that new identity mean? And it can also be a really positive thing to stay. Sometimes that's where students end up, staying in the area of their alma mater, because it is a rich community.
This is so fantastic. Also, props for quoting Wendell Berry. I'm wondering if if you have a student who comes to you and asks you all of these questions, when you're describing those three different ideas, the Denver, the go to Philly, the stay, I'm thinking of actual students that I know that from my elderly perspective, that would be a good fit. Do you counsel them to pray, ask the people who know them best what they're seeing, and then just take a leap? How do they decide which where?
Yeah, great question. Sometimes, you've probably had this experience, and if you're a young person listening, you may have had this experience too, where it all just feels so overwhelming. Like I have
Yeah.
no idea what I'm going to do. And even I'm thinking about your daughter, like so many options. Sometimes we know more than we think we know, and we need that person to hold up the mirror and reflect back to us. Part of what I hear you saying, you're telling me you're excited about a new adventure, but everything else I'm seeing in your body language and hearing from you,
Mm.
it seems like you have some significant roots here right around your alma mater. Like, what would it look like to stay? Could that be a possibility? And then you're kind of creating buckets of possibilities. And sometimes it feels like I could do anything. But after that conversation, we've got it narrowed down to about 5 different possibilities, and all of these could be really viable. Where I see students struggle, and I just want to release them to the freedom of decision making, that few decisions are irreversible. And so sometimes it's wringing our hands over, I should have gone right when maybe I was supposed to go left. And if I go right instead of left and I didn't hear from God, am I going to be cast into permanent plan B? And then I'm not going to meet the person I'm going to marry. And
Right.
it's going to all spiral downward.
Totally.
And I just want to say it's going to be okay. I think about a young woman who was like, I'm going to go to grad school. And she got everything together and started grad school and then was like, this is not a match. And instead of, freaking out, it was like, yeah, I spent some money and I made some, upended some things to do that, but it's not the end of the world. That decision is not irreversible. And so we know just from the stats that many individuals are anxious and fearful and about these decisions, but they're not as major as maybe it feels at the time. And so I'm not diminishing the anxiety that comes with it. I'm also just trying to say, it's going to be okay. When we have a lot of freedom, we don't have to pit two good decisions against one another as like, what's the ultimate? We could go right or left and a beautiful path could open up.
You do a beautiful job in your book of talking about how really untangling this idea that there's one zip code that God has for us in his quote, will. His will means that I'm going to listen for the right zip code. And you do a beautiful job rooting in scripture that actually our mandate is to love him and to love others. And that can look a lot of different ways in a lot of different places. We can actually expand our trust in a kind and compassionate, all-knowing God that he actually isn't very tied to our right or left. He will honor all sorts of foibles and all sorts of beautiful things too. That made me think of my husband, Mark, and I have laughed so many times about how we got where we are. I have 3 jobs, 2 of which didn't exist the day that I graduated. I have podcasting, which my grandmothers who are all gone now would not have known what that word is if I said it. And I'm a writing coach, which sounds like a fake job. And it's not, it's real. Mark double majored in physics and Spanish, also left and right brain. He was totally certain graduation day, 1998, totally sure that he was going to be an engineer. Shadowed someone after graduation, questionable timing there that he regrets, decided he hated that idea and now is an orthodontist. I'm positive that during undergrad, he never, maybe not even once, considered other people's teeth. And now he considers them all day long. Did we do it wrong, Erica? I don't think we did. I have a sneaking suspicion because I like how this ended up. But can you talk to us about that, about the idea of flexibility and resiliency? Again, we're kind of dovetailing on the top of the call or the top of the conversation where I feel like for so many years I had a very clear, there were just a finite number of things I could choose. And then when I ended up choosing, I completely launched into something different within, 10 years or so. So talk to us about that flexibility that we need. Did we do it wrong? What is this in the post-college life? Again, in that decade of 20s.
And I'm totally with you. You didn't do it wrong.
Okay, good. good.
And
If
one of
you
my
said we
favorite,
did, I probably would
yeah,
have disagreed.
I'm off the show. I'm off the show. um, no, one of my favorite things to invite young people to do is just find 10 people who are 10 years out or more and ask them, is the thing you studied in college the thing you're doing now?
Oh, I love it.
And you're going to find that probably three-fourths of them will say nope or more. Actually, research
Wow.
shows that only 27% of people in America are doing the thing that they trained for in college. I'm pulling that
Come
from the book
on.
Designing Your Life. Those individuals out at Stanford. And so
That
I
surprises
love,
me. I'm sorry to interrupt.
no,
That's
you're
very
fine.
surprising to me. 27% are
Only
doing what they thought
27,
they
what
would.
they yeah, you're going to have those
Wow.
individuals who are, they know they want to specialize. I'm
Yes.
going to be a veterinarian and I'm going to take that path. And for the rest of us, it's a journey. It's an
Yeah.
adventure.
Okay.
And we're learning along the way. I love that you point out the job shadowing opportunity for your husband. There's an author, Philip D. Gardner, talks about the importance of realistic previews. I got to try
Mm,
this thing out. The only way I'm going to know if I like the thing is to try the thing. And we get too few realistic previews. And so I'm such a big proponent of, internships, job shadowing, informational interviewing. Nice thing about teaching, that's kind of built in. You do your student teacher experience, but you may find, okay, this worked a little bit in this classroom setting, but now I'm in this district and it's not working quite right for me. And so I just think we're multifaceted people. And so for
hmm.
some of us, we really want to specialize, but for others of us, I'll borrow the term multipod or multi-potentialite from Emily Wapnick, who talks about it can be hard for those multipods to figure out what they want to do because there's so many things that we think, oh, I could try, that would be fun. I could try that. And this time, to nod to your comment about agility and flexibility, there's probably no greater time for the
Mm.
multipod because this economy, this certain time we're living in is requiring a ton of agility and flexibility and resiliency. Something might not work out, and you have to make a move and go in a different
Mm.
direction. But all of it, I do think the dots eventually connect. That you start to see, wow, that experience built this up and now I'm better in this setting because I had that experience. I don't think, even though my life is certainly not linear, I can see dot connection along the way.
I love that you approach this entire conversation in a multifaceted way. You talk to us as full human beings. We have a calling. Your whole framework is to look at this as an act of faith. Look at our lives as as acts of faithfulness in terms of our relationship with God, our relationships with each other and our community, and then also our calling. And I thought you would flip those. I thought we'd start calling first, because that's such the thrust in your last year of college. What are you doing? Calling as vocation or as employment. And so I appreciated that you talk about this in such a wider lens. And I also appreciate that you give voice to the idea that it's not always going to be comfortable. At dinner last night, I was talking about you to my family, and we were talking about how much that resonated, that you point out we are very much used to the idea that comfort is the goal. And if you don't believe me, open up, turn on the TV, or open up any social media or news app on your phone, and you will be bombarded with ads that are basically saying over and over again, are you uncomfortable? We will fix this. Within 2 days, we'll have it at your house. So for new grads, and actually for parents of new grads, this is such a great reminder that comfort is not the ultimate goal. Comfort is actually, it's elevated as a god, really, for us right now. And we should not think we're doing something wrong if something's feeling like a season of discomfort. If your job's not quite right, grad, if your conversations with your grad are a little bit wonky, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means, most likely means you are a full human being with a
Amen.
lot of different
Amen.
aspects to your life. So talk to me specifically about that last group, the family members, supporters, people who are coming alongside grads. How can we best support the people who are in that time of transition, whether it is the very first 6 months or we're moving on into multiple years? How do we breathe oxygen onto those fires and support them well? Because that's a new phase. It's very
That's
different than the
right.
last graduation season when
Yeah.
they're 18 or whatever.
Yeah. So good. So many things I think we can do. And if someone's listening today and they are a parent of that recent grad, I think maybe one thing to name is that you're going through your own transition as they're going through theirs. And that's an impact. To name that you have something else going, especially if this is your last child to leave the nest or your first child to leave the nest, to name, whoa, there's things going on internally, psychologically with me. I'm grieving. I'm naming those things for ourselves, right? We want to be self-aware of our own process as we help someone, put your mask on, then help somebody else,
Yeah,
right? Be
right.
aware. And then as
That's
we're
good.
helping that young person, I think to be mindful, they're going through a major life transition. And that might mean they're grieving the loss of relationships. We don't talk a lot about endings in our culture, unfortunately. I think we're like, oh, on to the next thing. Oh, what's the next exciting adventure? When really there's a lot of ending and dismantling and grieving that needs to take place, especially for the person who experienced a 4-year traditional college experience where maybe that was some of the richest community they've ever been a part of. And now everyone's scattered all across the United States and world. And, not that we don't have technology to connect us, but it's not the same as embodied.
Right.
Oh, I can walk across the quad and hang out in my apartment with my friends every Friday and Saturday night. This looks different. And so, and it takes time and space then to be, I'm borrowing from William Bridges in terms of transition cycles, that ending and then that very fallow in between time. And to be really patient with ourselves and with others as they're going through that middle. I think it's the hardest part of the transition and the place where God does some of our best heart work. But we may want to fast forward that because it feels uncomfortable. And so allowing that person in your life to be in that space without judgment, and then allowing ourselves if we're going through our own transition, because it can be a feeling of very empty, even if, the weather is changing and it's spring outside, we may still feel like it is November in our heart, like it hasn't changed yet. And so patience with that part of the transition, and the new beginning will eventually come. But I think just patience with the process and kindness and encouragement. I think young grads need a lot, like buckets of encouragement. You can do this. They may also need help. This is from the researchers out at Pepperdine University. Back to your comment about resilience, they may need help naming some of those resilience skills. Like, remember in COVID when you came out the other end, and here are some of the things you learned. We may need help naming some of those things, just not aware. And one of the most powerful acts of resilience is just for people to be able to tell their story. I know you love story, Kim, and for young people to be able to say, this is my story. And parents, it may not be you they choose to share it with. They may really need to rely on that peer to share the story. That's maybe the place where they feel most known. I remember my mom trying her Kubler-Ross transition cycle, grief cycle on me. I'm like, I don't need your consulting nunchucks right now. I just need to cry, and so
she's taking you through the stages of grief. Oh my gosh, that looks like anger. Erica, I think you're in anger.
I was angry.
You were.
And angry at her for trying that.
That is hilarious. Oh, bless your mom. I'm sure you've said since then, I get it now.
We've laughed. Yes. I was like, I know you were right. I just couldn't hear it from you.
Sure. That's awesome. I love that you include a quote by Zora Neale Hurston. I mean, I'm just going to say this is a nerd comment, so pause this if you're not into this, listener. But your bibliography, I kept thinking, oh, I'm reading that. I mean, even in this conversation, you've cited 5,000 other authors. Come on, book nerd, be my friend. Okay, I love that you include this quotation by Zora Neale Hurston where she said, there are years that ask questions and years that answer. How do you counsel alums to know the difference? That is to say, is there an expiration on the question season and an indication of when to move to the answer?
If you graduate on May 10th, the season is about 67 days, and then you get a memo. No, don't you wish it could be like that?
I really wish it could be like that.
Not in my life either. And that's the value of community, that we're not doing this in a vacuum, just us and God. And I I do think transitions are that time where you deepen relationship with God and friendship with Jesus. And I also think that we need the community.
Yeah.
Just given, we do a lot in our in my professional life with temperament. Given our temperament, we were just training this morning on different decision-making styles. There may be individuals who are, they're quicker to try to move toward that answer. That's just their bias in their temperament and their style. Like, I just want to move this thing forward. Some individuals may get stuck in a more analytical style and they're just trying to gather information. They might benefit from someone coming alongside and say, I think it's no longer analysis, it's analysis paralysis at this point. And, what are some pathways forward here? I know you want to make the perfect choice. There is no perfect choice. Let's try to move. We're going to have to try something. And so I think knowing something about our own temperament and our propensity when it comes to asking questions and making decisions. But I think embedded in that quote is to be patient when we don't know the answers. And let's face it, every year of our life we'll have questions, or there may be answers that we don't ever get this side of heaven, that there's going to be a waiting no matter what phase we're in. Absolutely. But I like in the question is this, there is a point where we have to vote with our feet, where we can't just, there's a time where I was in a job that I knew I needed to get out of, and I had made a decision that I needed to leave, but I couldn't act. I didn't act on that decision. And finally, my husband was like, Erica, you have to vote with your feet here. Like, you've decided you can't be here, but like, you're still there because you haven't voted yet with your feet. And so it's not just about making decisions, but also acting on them. And I know I wanted a ticker tape parade to start once I acted. It doesn't happen like that. It's just like one foot in front of the other. All right, you made a decision. Keep moving.
Right. Yeah. Oh boy, is that the truth. Last question. Well, not second to last, penultimate question. What's your last bit of encouragement to graduates? We are in graduation season. This was very well timed by your publishing team that this would hit me in a moment of graduate. I'm sure they did it for me, but I'm not the only one. I just got my first grad party invite yesterday afternoon. So we are moving into that
That's
space.
A planner. That's a planner.
Yeah,
Mom
I know.
Or dad.
I'm so impressed. I don't know when this episode's coming out, but she was early. So we're in it. We're in the middle of that, of those transitions for all sorts of graduates. What do you have to say as we finish our time together to encourage them and lift them up in this time of almost big time transition?
Yeah, the book does end, spoiler alert, with something about it's going to be okay. And I don't say that as a platitude, but really it comes from two gentlemen who were sitting at a coffee shop together, artist David Arms and his friend Lloyd Shadrach, when they were sitting at a coffee shop during the economic downturn of 2008 and saying, the world is teetering on the edge of chaos here and desperately needs a message of hope. And so they coined ICBOC, it's going to be okay. And I want every recent grad to have that bumper sticker, to have that water bottle sticker, like something to remind them it is going to be okay. And how we define okay, to get back to that comment about comfort, it may not be our definition of okay, but if we know the beginning and the end of the story, and God is taking you to a land that is good things will prevail, and there is so much life after college. In fact, that was my proposal for the title, Life After College. And Kim, as you know, titles always get changed, but I love the title. And implicit in after college, there is life after college, good life. It may not unfold as we expect, but hang in there. Good things are around that next corner. And I hope that young people could graduate with expectancy and hope, deep hope that the God of the universe has them, and he's that solid foundation in every shifting time.
Awesome. Okay, book nerd, your final question. What's on? I hope you know that is basically the kindest thing I can say to you, calling you a book nerd.
Oh, I do love it. I will receive that all day long.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Tell me about your bookshelf. What is on it? What is something that you are looking forward to reading, or something that you've recommended a million times and can't get enough of for other people?
You know, you can't ask this question to
I know.
a book nerd. Like,
it's actually kind of mean.
It's kind of mean. It feels like asking, you have 10 kids, which one's your favorite child? Like, it's really,
I know.
Really
I hate it when people ask me this question. I don't know why I do it all the time to my guests. There is no wrong answer,
I
Erica.
love.
You can turn left or you can turn right. Nothing is irreversible.
I love learning about Gen Z. And so there's a book on my
Okay.
shelf, Z Economy, that's like Gen Z in Business by Jason Dorsey and his wife, Denise Villa. So I really enjoyed reading that recently.
Okay.
I did get to blurb a book about Gen Z. And so that's forthcoming with IVP, what Gen Z really what Gen Z really wants to know about God.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
we did talk about Iowa and writing. And so one of my favorite books of all time that will always get a prominent place on my bookshelf is Gilead by Marilynne
Oh,
Robinson.
forget it.
You know why I'm
She
thinking
is
about that
amazing.
recently is just there's this line in that book that says, put yourself in the way of the gift. And I just think that
Mm.
it's a message for recent grads that good things are about to unfurl. And I want to encourage young people with a yes mindset that so many are defaulting to no, like even for a social invitation, like, nah, maybe I'll get a better
Mm.
offer. I just want to encourage, put yourself in the way of the gift, adopt that yes mindset and watch how just really fun things come of that. So that's my read and reread
That's
book.
a great endorsement. My gosh, first of all, Robinson should send you a thank you note because that was a very beautiful
If I get
untangling
something
for
from
words.
Marilynne Robinson, I would put that in my house,
I would
like in a
pass out.
frame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's unbelievable. Great recommendations. Well, Erica, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I told you before we were before we were recording that this is now going to be my book as a gift for every college grad. I never know what to get college grads because really I want them to have, I should get them insurance or I don't know, a down payment on their first housing.
I'll
But
start your 401k.
exactly. I can't do
That's
that,
right.
but I
No,
can't
you
get this.
can't.
It
You
should be
can't.
required reading.
Mhm.
It is so practical, so smart, also written with a lot of heart and a ton of good backing of what you've kicked the tires about these ideas. So I just appreciate the time and the care that you've taken to write about this and speak about this. And I wish you Godspeed because I think your voice is very needed in this space. So thanks for lending it to me today.
Kim, thank you. Thanks for asking great questions. Thanks for your heart for young people and for thriving in life in
Mm.
general. Love it. Thank you again for inviting me to be a guest.